And GM fam, welcome to another Friday Llama Party, this time featuring the great Wormhole Oracle. Let's take
Yeah,
a.
GM fam.
How are you doing, sir? Or madam? Is it sir or madam?
I can identify as sir and or madam.
All right. For convenience,
No,
we'll.
I'm a sir. Let's just do sir.
All right. Excellent, excellent. How are you doing, sir?
Well, I'm doing great. My voice is a little hairy today because I was out at a show last night,
Oh yeah.
which you missed out. It was a fantastic show, and if you had gone, you could be like me with the raspy voice, nursing your coffee, you know, feeling like everything hurts.
Now, are you able to tell us much about the show, or is that too much information about your personal, your personal non-crypto
Oh
life to
no,
share?
no. I'll talk about it. I thought it was great. It's a DJ duo called Funk Hunters, and they do a lot of EDM music that's infused with like soul and hip hop and R&B. So lots of like really like high emotion kind of like groovy kind of music. So it's very fun to dance to.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, how late were you out?
Show actually went until 1 o'clock. I was surprised it went that late for a
Oh my
Thursday
god.
night.
Wow. And now you're up this morning, this early, doing our silly little stuff.
Nursing my coffee and having a great conversation with an awesome dude.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this is a llama
Yeah.
party, so hopefully we'll have other people joining. If you are new to llama parties, the Discord is open. The voice channel general, just pop right on in. It's Friday, so it's like grab a favorite beverage of your choice. I'm going with something caffeinated as well, but maybe you're in the mood to start earlier in a different time zone, and come on in and hang out. And we're just chatting with the great Wormhole Oracle.
Yeah, have a matcha green tea, might be a good option.
Plenty of good options. Plenty of good options. So for
Water's
those,
always good.
yeah. So thanks so much for writing also that article. Like I ahead of time, I asked you to go ahead and write some thoughts, and you came back and you certainly delivered.
Oh,
You
yeah, great.
a bunch of great stuff, and I was kind of curious to hear. Like you said, you got into it back during the 2017 bubble, which
Right.
is makes you an OG, I'd say at this point. I don't know what the official cutoff
Yeah,
is, but you've been
I
through a
don't know
couple
what
of
the
boom
OG
bust
cutoff
cycles here.
is. I feel still like a noob being from the 2017 bubble because I think that was kind of the one where it really hit the masses. Before that, like people were talking about it. I'd heard of Bitcoin as early as 2015, I want to say. I think that was the 2015 bubble.
Hmm.
Um, but all I knew about it at that point was just a guy staying over at my house raving about like how the price had gone up and how it could go up another 10x. And I was like cocking an eyebrow and I was like, okay, this guy is like clearly consumed by greed. And I kind of hope it goes the other direction because it's just kind of gross when people are like doing the moon boy thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. And you mentioned that in your interview when you said that you kind of prefer the bear markets and the building energy to the kind of bull markets and the greed energy. And I'm right there with you. But it's sort of sad in that like the industry really only seems to get like let's say attention when it's like a greed cycle.
That's true, and I guess that's just a part of the whole deal. It's the being in this space, we have aspirations about what kind of world we want to build, and we believe that it's building a better world that's more inclusive to more people, more transparent, more resilient to like negative things that can happen, like these rate credit rating institutions that are sort of behaving in seedy ways and like nefarious things sort of happening in the underbelly of the financial system. We can kind of bring those things more to the forefront and have it more transparent. But we also have the bad side of it, which is that humans are motivated by greed. We all are. I am, and if I didn't have the potential of making money, I wouldn't be here in the first place. So we have to accept that like um, we can be idealistic and want to make a better world, but we also have like a little monster living inside of us, every one of us.
Yeah, it's fair. It's tough. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it is what it is. And we see we have our first guest joining the llama party. So let's raise a glass to NPC68, rocking a gorgeous, gorgeous profile picture. And Diligent Deer has just popped in the chat as well. Feel free to turn on your mics and say something.
Diligent Deer. Deer's awesome. Deer has been helping the curve. Well, we can't call it the curve risk team. He's been helping the crypto risk assessment team, which deals exclusively with curve related risk. And he's been doing research reports for us. So he released one already that was on MakerDAO and DAI, and we're currently working on another one. It's in review, and that one. What was that one on? We've got so many like reports that I'm like losing track of them now.
It is like absolutely the best like content I've seen on Substack, and that's like really steep competition. There's some really amazing amateurs who have come in. I like to think that I inspire everyone by like I just like write kind of whatever garbage is in my head, and I feel like there's a million people that are like inspired to do so much better, yourself included.
No, you do a great job. I mean, you've been doing this curve cap thing for like 2 years now or more.
Almost 2 years, yeah, which is kind of crazy. But I feel like the only thing I can say to mine is that I have like the like diligence, not to steal Diligent Deer's thunder, but you know I'm able to crank them out kind of regularly. But I'm just like blown away by the quality of the research reports that the crypto risks team keeps putting out. Like every time there's like a handful of Substacks that when they publish something, I just drop everything and read it because it's that interesting. And by like absolutely, the work that you all do is great. So anything you can tease about some of the upcoming ones, like I would be thrilled to hear some of that alpha.
Yeah. So what Deer is working on currently is Liquidy's chicken bonds. Like really, really weird kind of concept, but like, you know, using their LUSD stablecoin to generate yield using these bonds that you lock up for a time period.
Yeah, and that one is really interesting because I was kind of seeing it on Twitter and seeing all these people like raving about it. And I was like, okay, let me take the plunge and try and figure out what this is exactly. And then I read up on it, and it's not as complicated as I thought. But it is like genius, just absolutely genius. Have you gotten a chance to look much into it? Or are you going to say the opposite? Are you going to say in the crypto risks that this is incredibly risky and nobody should touch it?
I guess what I can say about it is just the only thing I know about it is reviewing what Deer has been working on so far. And I think I need a little bit more time to kind of wrap my head around it because it seems pretty complex what they're trying to do, and it's not immediately apparent what the possible pitfalls of it could be. But like anything that in crypto, you have to come to it with like a realistic mindset that these things, you know, can fail and do often. And so you have to think in an adversarial way of like what could potentially go wrong with these things. So that's basically what we're trying to do with all of our risk assessments is we're trying to look at, you know, how can this thing break? And usually those things that break more often than not tend to be because of centralization vectors. So those are the big points that we try to look at. If the protocol could be shut down, for instance, or it couldn't continue operating if one person or a small multi-sig of people, then that can be a problem. And some of those centralization vectors are not immediately on the surface, but if you do dig into them, then oftentimes you can pull up and be like, oh, you know, I'm sort of going on a rant now, but I'm my mind's going back to the Moki incident. Which was the reason that the crypto risk assessment team was put together in the first place, and that was an incident where an admin had control over the price of an asset, their native token, that could be used as collateral to mint a stablecoin. So it may not have been immediately apparent by looking at it that the stablecoin could be infinite minted. But if you took a look at like who's controlling the price of this thing, it turns out that there's no oversight. That he could infinite mint a stablecoin. So how is that worth $1? It could And what he did is he minted a whole bunch of the MUSD and sold it into the curve pool and basically stole a bunch of money from the LPs in the pool.
Now, what if it
Um,
was Jerome Powell was the person with that minting power? Would that make it acceptable?
I think that it probably depends on a person's personal risk profile and what they feel comfortable with. So what we do with our assessments is we're not saying like, oh, Jerome Powell has the power to infinite mint, and so we shouldn't allow this stable coin to be a part of Curve. Well, we will give our honest feedback and say like, hey, Jerome, he can control this protocol, and it lives and dies by his power. And Curve DAO, you guys do what you think is right, and keep that centralization vector in mind. So what we're trying to do is bring these issues to light so that everybody knows what's going on, because there's often so much going on in the crypto space. Things are changing daily, and it can be hard for people to keep track of everything. So having a group that is kind of an authority on this subject matter to be like, okay, these are the things that we're looking at, and this is what we found. It can just make a really quickly digestible way for a large number of people, community members of the DAO to take a look at it and just get a quick rundown of what we need to look out for and what looks like it could be a problem.
Yeah, let's dive into this point on multi-sigs because it's such a fascinating topic. Like obviously there's been a lot of like good work done by security advocates, like Chris Black pops to mind, where he goes around and basically exposes multi-sigs that have a minority of signers. So like a 205 multi-sig, I think is securing Polygon, or maybe it's like 3 of 7, whatever it is. I'm pretty sure it's minority. I don't have that number
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, I know he criticizes Chainlink too. I pay attention to that because I really like the Chainlink protocol, and so I see he's oftentimes complaining that they have a multi-sig and it's like 4 of 9 or something. They actually improved the multi-sig, possibly because of his criticism. But yeah,
Right.
yeah, I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, having operated a multi-sig, like my biggest exposure for multi-sigs comes from operating the multi-sig for PackDAO, for which I'm one of the co-signers on it. And initially we were looking at well, we started off and by default it was like 1 of 5 or something. So we quickly changed it to 2 of 5. And it's a good thing we didn't go to 3 of 5 because a lot of the other
Hmm.
people just got busy with life. And they
Oh yeah,
started and said this is gonna be a priority. Of course, I'll be able to sign these things. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
stuff gets in the way, and now like we can like they're still alive. Like they haven't fallen necessarily off the face of the earth, but it might be a month before they respond to something. And
Yeah.
like it can be like impractical to manage it if we have people who have said, hey, we just did this work, we'd like our payment, and we say we want to pay you, we promise, like we are trying to pay you, you can see this transaction sitting there in the multisig, we're just waiting for someone to like get around and sign it. So like what's the trade-off that you see in terms of what's that right number of like multi-sig signers to be safe, and how do you evaluate that in the context of like the crypto risks team?
Right, yeah. And the not so helpful answer is I guess it depends. It probably depends on the size of the protocol, and it depends on how much value is at stake, and if the multisig is in control of some sort of treasury assets for the protocol, or it deals with a large amount of value, then you really need to be like on the more secure end of the multi-sig, meaning you have more members, more owners of the safe, and a higher like MMN, whatever, people who have to sign off on it. Um, I think in a perfect world, everything would all these protocols would be a real DAO. Like Curve is a real DAO that uses token voting with this amazing like V tokenomic system to ensure that it can't be attacked, that somebody can't borrow a whole bunch of CRV token and do a governance attack, and it ensures the long term alignment of the participants in it. But in the real world, that's pretty complicated, and it's probably a hindrance to a lot of those protocols. So a lot of them, I'm thinking of Frax is the first one that comes to mind. They ostensibly have a multi-sig to govern really important parts of the protocol, but it actually in practice ends up being mostly or pretty much exclusively the Frax team who is generating transactions for it. Technically, there is a governance module that token holders can vote or overrule the multi-sig, but it hasn't been used in practice, and they've been talking about improving the governance, and that was actually another risk report that was made by our Dan Smith, a really smart guy who made a dashboard for Curve on Dune Analytics, which most people have probably checked it out. But if you haven't checked it out, he's at SMYY Guy, SMYY Guy. And he made this great dashboard for them. But he also made a report for on Frax's governance and their commitment to improving the security of their governance, which things kind of take a little bit longer than people originally think. Originally, when we talked to Frax, it was at the end of 2021, and they were saying in 6 months we're going to have this improved governance. That hasn't happened yet. So we talked to them again. That's what Dan was working on. So he was also corresponding with the Frax team on this, and they're telling us, I think it was by the end of this year they think they're going to do it, and what they're going to change is they're going to change it so that the token holders will have the right to veto anything that the multi-sig does. So the multi-sig will still have the authority to generate things, but it'll have oversight from the DAO, which may be a really great compromise in terms of security and efficiency. So I'm pretty excited to see them do this. It's kind of an experiment that I haven't seen done before, but if they pull it off, it could end up being a good model for a lot of these other protocols that want to have the efficiency of having a multi-sig, but they want to offer their users the guarantee that, hey, you're actually the owners here, and we can't just rug you on a whim.
Absolutely. And by the way, I see a few new people have popped into the chat. So Carbon Lattice, if you have if you want to say anything to Wormhole Oracle, don't be shy. It's a llama party.
Llama party.
Same goes
Diligent. Llamas.
Yeah.
Hey, there we go.
I actually have a question about the multi-sigs. So 2 questions. Do modern multi-sigs, are they built in for this kind of lost keys type problem where, let's say somebody loses access to the accounts, do modern Gnosis, do these multi-sigs basically revert to some state if a certain amount of time passes and there's no activity? And secondly, has anyone explored the idea that essentially the number of, like a dynamic system where the number of yay votes changes, the number of minimum requirement to pass it decays over time? So let's say you introduce something and you need like a majority immediately to pass something, but as time progresses, essentially the number of votes is decreased slowly as the community gets time to anticipate. This goes back to your whole, if people have real lives and something happens and they're gone for a month, right, and then the protocol just goes down. Do you guys have any idea about these 2 different points about the security built into for lost keys, and then also anybody explored this time variable with voting?
I mean, with the second thing you're talking about, that sounds a lot like how the V-curve voting works, because
you're right. Yeah.
when you have a DAO vote, initially you vote with the full power of your V-curve voting power, whatever that is. But over the course of that of that particular vote, uh, after 3 days or 4 days that it's been live on chain, your vote power starts to decrease. So as you get closer to the time limit when the vote's over, you have zero voting power for that vote. Although you still have, although you still have all your V curve, you know, your vote power isn't significant anymore. And that's, I think that Mick designed that so that a whale couldn't come in at the last moment and change the outcome of a vote kind of by surprise. So we're trying to avoid surprises.
Got it. Better transparency. Yeah, exactly. They can't come in and just swing it at the very end. Got it.
Yeah, and but also there's the component of V curve decays linearly over time as you get closer to your unlock time, and that's, you know, the way to ensure long-term alignment with the protocol. Because if you want to be influential, you need to be basically perma-locked with your V curve, which in practice it's turned out individuals aren't so hot on that idea because they like to be able to sell their assets when, you know, when the price goes up or whatever, and, you know, they need to pay for stuff. But a really interesting dynamic has emerged there where we have these organizations that are popping up around Curve. So we have Convex, we have StakeDAO, we have Yearn, and to a smaller degree, we have some multi-sig run protocols like Frax is whitelisted, Redacted's whitelisted. So we do this whitelisting process to allow these organizations in, and they're basically just like, oh, we want to become a black hole to eat up all the curve supply, and then we have our own users that are custodians of our own protocol, who may have less of a time alignment, a lower time alignment, but the organization itself is basically permanently tied to the core curve protocol. And that's really wonderful, I think, because I don't think that an organization scales by having a completely decentralized, you know, one person, one vote kind of thing where, you know, all the individuals of the protocol are making enormous decisions. I think it's much better if we have a protocol that is consisting of all these other sub-organizations, and they're, you know, they have their own structure and way of organizing and their own kind of goals that they're trying to attain, and those power centers, I think, can better scale the operation, and it can be better for everybody. So I actually at some point I was advocating for removing the whitelist for this very reason, that I thought more organizations built around Curve is going to make Curve stronger. That was a really contentious vote, and it was pretty rough for me because I got a lot of pushback aggressively at the time. But it was an interesting debate about, you know, what's the best way to scale Curve as an organization.
Yeah, that white.
Yeah, so
Oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking of the first question that you had asked. But no, you go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to ask some of your thoughts on that. That whitelist proposal, you know, removing the whitelist is, you know, certainly it's what we need. Is we need people throwing random ideas out there and seeing what sticks. Because Curve is really only as powerful as the community stepping up and saying these things. So
that's really what I was thinking. I'm thinking, like, you know, an organism evolves because it faces some kind of challenges in its environment, and it needs to mutate to adapt to it, right? And if you try to prevent the organism from exploring ways of adapting, like, oh, you know, you have to, I don't know, I don't know where I'm going with this analogy, but if you try to limit what kind of experiments can be done, you're going to not be capable of evolving and adapting to your environment. So what I felt about the whitelist, and what I still kind of feel about it, is that it is something that inhibits the ability for people to just like throw out ideas and hey, does this thing stick? Are people gonna come use my protocol that I just like decide to permissionlessly build on top of Curve? We don't have that. They have to ask permission from the DAO before they can do anything.
Yeah, and that DAO can be very difficult to get things through, can't it?
It can be difficult. Surprisingly, a lot of things end up being not very contentious in DAO votes. Like if the core team supports something, usually that everybody else just kind of goes along with it. And that tends to be like part of the voter apathy problem in DAO governance is that a lot of people don't really have a whole lot of time to put into it, and so they're like, oh, our leaders are supporting this, so yeah, sounds great. Um, but like we were talking before, Curve is built a little bit differently, where it has these sub organizations, and in particular, Convex is a large organization. It has, I think, the majority of the vCurve voting power. So whatever Convex says as an organization ends up going pretty much. Which is not maybe not entirely fair or true because Convex does split its vote power based on its own second layer voting. So if 50% vote yes, 50% vote no, they'll vote on chain 50% yes and no with their vote power. So it doesn't operate as a complete block, but it does operate as an organization that has its own set of goals that is trying to achieve. So if they see something that is kind of damaging to Convex's dominance in some way, they might universally just kind of be like, you know what, we don't really want to support this other protocol taking away our market share, so we're going to crush them. They could do that. I'm not saying that that has happened in practice. In fact, I've noticed that the opposite has sometimes happened in practice. I've noticed that Convex has behaved in competitive kind of ways that I wouldn't have expected, because I tend to take the cynical view that that if you've got a monopoly, then you're going to try to maintain your monopoly and further it. But I've seen on several occasions that Convex has voted to whitelist other protocols. Probably because they don't see them as a threat, and they consider their dominance like set in stone at this point, which is probably pretty fair, at least for the near to mid future. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been really interesting to watch the kind of flippening of Convex owning VECRV, and I have the Dan Smith dashboard up, and as you can see, he's tracking that Convex is at 47.2%, which is actually interesting because I need to dive into this because I thought that they were at the majority at some point. I'd seen 53% floating around, and this one doesn't have anything over 50%. So maybe it was 53% of like DAO owned VECRV. But at any rate, like in watching like the run up to it, I kind of get the impression that people have a great deal of trust in the Convex CHAD developers like C2TP, Crypto Winthrop. And I think if people had sensed any impropriety on their part, they might have raised a lot more red flags. But everything I've seen from Convex has been that their point of view on these things is that they're heavily invested in Curve and they want to do what's best for Curve. So they really want to grow the ecosystem. And if they are there shutting down people, it doesn't grow the ecosystem, right? Like if word got out that Convex was trying to crush any competitors, I think people would just stop building on Curve.
Yeah, and that was something I noticed that made me restore my faith in humanity when I saw that, hey, Convex isn't actually behaving in an anti-competitive way, and it's because of what you say. It's that they do realize that they're aligned with Curve, and they need to prioritize the good of Curve in order to support themselves. I would have expected more short-term thinking because people are flawed, but I guess that's also maybe a testament to the power of the Curve V tokenomics that when you're in it, you are in it. Like Convex is permanently tied to Curve at this point. Well, they've sort of expanded now that they have this thing going with Frax, but that also ties into Curve because Frax is the largest. I think the largest TVL at this point of Curve is probably Frax. I don't know if that's true. Maybe I'm just making numbers, but
And
they've been growing like substantially. Those two powers together, Convex and Frax.
And yeah, Frax for its part has also taken the exact same tack because at this point, Frax has such a dominant TVL, such a dominant stash of convex that they can bribe as they like. And Sam has been very blatant about saying that his interest is in partnering with anyone who wants to partner with them. He wants to have positive sum games. And you would have thought that this bear market, if anything, would have brought out the hostility. But it's been just really amazing to see like all these kind of flywheel protocols actually synergizing. I wonder if it's the case for like 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when the entire world economy is architected off of Curve, Frax, Convex. If all of a sudden you'll start to see civil wars or like world wars fought over like the descendants of like Mitch and the descendants of Sam trying to like cleave these empires, but
okay, yeah, you should write a book about that.
The Curve Wars 2045.
I got another question. Back to the, you're talking about the VE tokenomics, and definitely in my view, what draws me to the Curve ecosystem is things like the crypto risk team, Frax, the depth of research and thought that goes into so much behind the work and the analysis. That really is what attracts me to this subset of the ecosystem. I wonder, do you think what was the VE tokenomics early on a critical part simply because people who identified early, they locked in and then they were essentially stuck in the ecosystem and therefore, constantly their hands were tied to build, or obviously, I mean, Curve has the, V2, it has very unique, the fact that it has its own internal oracle, things like that. Those are fundamental and innovations, and I'm not disregarding those, but what fact do you guys think the VE tokenomics played that you had to commit to the protocol? Essentially, you had to be aligned.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing that when the V tokenomics was first introduced, I was completely on board with that. And for me personally, I just I love having a conviction in whatever I want to have a conviction in. So in my case, I have a conviction about Curve is a great DEX, and it'll be like the 4x on the blockchain in the future. I have a strong conviction about the Chainlink protocol because I see it as the layer that connects everything, all the blockchains together, all of the traditional finance Web 2 world to the blockchain. It's the layer that sits and connects everything. And so when I see like something like the V tokenomics that are telling you that if you want to be a part of this, you have to get locked in. I'm all about that because that's just what brings me joy is to have that conviction and see it through. I don't want to like dabble in protocols and be like, oh yeah, I'll try to be part of this community for a little while, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just hop out and find another one. I think being stuck in Curve, it's kind of a rough rule to have, but for the people who decide that they're okay with that, it's a great rule to make sure that you're building a diehard community. And that's what I wanted to be a part of, is like a really dedicated community, a community that's intellectually curious, because I noticed early on that there's a lot of discussions about, math stuff that's completely over my head, and like designing these new kinds of systems, and it was less of this like moon boy pump my bags kind of talk, which you see in a lot of different communities and in crypto. And so yeah, Curve attracts the right kind of people, and the V tokenomics plays a lot of a role in making that happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. It takes the emotion out of it, really. You commit and then you just build.
Yeah, what I find amazing in particular is like every part of basically the VE tokenomics when it was released was trashed. So all the crypto influencers were saying how it's garbage. It's the emission schedule is too aggressive, makes no sense. The locking, no one's going to do it. 4 years is too long. It's a lifetime in cryptocurrency. And like Mitch has this habit of kind of thinking through these problems and solving them so far in advance that most people don't realize their problems. So like
Yep.
flash forward 1 to 2 years later, and all of a sudden, every protocol starts to realize the problem with launching their own token and their tokenomics, and they all invariably fall into different aspects of VE tokenomics or just copying it completely, because they really just solved all of it in the best possible way. And I have yet to see any like major iteration on it that I consider to be clearly superior to what they've done.
Yeah, and in the early days of the Curve DAO, when the gauge system was introduced, the gauge weighting, I was kind of picking it apart and thinking like, oh, is this really like the best way to incentivize pools, that we have this voting where people are voting for themselves? And there's been a lot of criticism of gauge weighting, that it's just like a self-serving mechanism, and it creates a lot of chaos. And I was talking to Mick about it, and I was like, do you really think that this is the way that this should be? And I remember his response was something to the effect of, yeah, people don't realize it yet how powerful this is, but give them some time, and I think you'll see how powerful it is. And it became true, because eventually we had these bribing mechanisms, and we have these different kinds of experiments using the curve gauge, like the vFunder thing. And there's a lot of ways that you can explore this gauge weighting, and it's completely decentralized. It's not something that the team decides that they're going to allocate a certain way to incentivize certain kinds of pools. It's something that the entirety of the DAO contributes to making the gauge weighting happen and possible. And it's become a really powerful tool. It took people a while to realize how powerful it was.
It's like the story with all of the curve innovations. Like they all say genius is not recognized in its own time. It's like Mitch will release something, and then a year or two later, people will start to catch on. I feel like people are just starting to catch on to how incredible V2 pools are, for example. Like I think it launched in the midst of kind of like the initial market turbulence, so everything was going down. A lot of DeFi protocols were going under, just like trying to figure out how to survive. And I feel like now we're starting to see some DeFi innovation resuming, and a lot of these protocols are realizing that the best choice to launch on are these V2 curve pools. So in the same way that we saw like Curve played this like outsized importance in the last like round of the stablecoin wars, particularly like with the collapse of Terra and everything, we're starting to see, for example, all the staked Ether wars might start to play out on Curve as well. As we start to see, like, obviously, Steth was one of the first staked Ether solutions, and then since then we've seen Coinbase ETH is getting into it, JPEG's ETH is getting into it, and all these are building curve pools, and in some cases V2 curve pools. So
Yeah, is Frax doing ETH now?
yeah, I forgot to mention Frax ETH.
They are Frax ETH.
And they're committing big to that one too. Like they have the biggest stash of Convex, and they have announced that they are going to be using it to make Frax ETH the best. I think it was the highest yielding was what they're looking for.
Yeah, Frax is pretty big brain. I have a hard time following what happens with Frax, because they have so much stuff going on. Like they have the Frax Lend product they just released recently, and I don't know how much that's grown. I know that it started off modestly. I don't know how it's been going. They have the Frax Lend, Frax Swap. They've got the FPI thing, the inflation adjusted stablecoin. Yeah. Whew,
I feel like they're similar to Mitch, and they just keep launching things and waiting for the market to realize, oh my gosh, this stuff is amazing.
There's also a funny coincidence that both Curve up until like recently, had this old UI, which is beautiful in its own right, but quite jarring when you first encounter it, right? And then also Frax for a long time, they've cleaned up a bit, but it was so overwhelming. There's just data overload. So both these protocols always had these kind of, very nuanced and kind of esoteric UIs. It's just kind of funny coincidence.
I think Mitch's dream UI would be you open crv.fi and it's just a terminal that has like a brownie
Yeah.
console on it.
Well, I saw that Conic did that, right?
They did.
When Conic made their website, they made like the terminal thing, so you just write in the commands. I thought that was pretty funny. I thought that Curve should have something like that.
There was some talk, I know.
But since we're talking about UI, I also met Amy. Actually, so for other people listening, I met Garrett and Amy earlier this year in the summer. We went on a hike together because Garrett was like, "Hey, I'm going on a hike in the Pacific Northwest. If somebody's around, and I was like, "Holy crap, Garrett, you live like where I live." So we ended up going out and going for a hike. And Amy is wonderful, and she appears to have to be doing a lot of work on the UI lately. So that just the crv.fi website just transitioned to the new UI, I guess.
It is I'm biased, but it is a very, very amazing UI. The one thing though is I really want to replace that background. Replace that background with some vector like art of the same thing, and it's going to be like sick. But
Oh yeah,
I was gonna say spoilers. I also live in the Pacific Northwest, so yeah, if there's
Oh my
another
gosh.
like llama party meetup for a hike,
Yeah.
just let me know. Post it in the chat.
Oh, excellent! We got to make it happen.
Winter is now upon us. As
Yeah,
you
not
guys are aware,
yeah.
but-
Hiking season's well past us now.
Who are we talking to?
Carbon lattice.
Actually, I live next door. Sorry, I live next door to you. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, now it's getting creepy.
Can you hear, can you hear me through the walls?
Yeah. No, but yeah, I definitely and next summer or better weather. Yeah, definitely for the curve market cap Discord.
There's a surprising number of crypto heavy hitters here in the Northwest. I'm not going to dox everyone who's here in the Northwest, but it's amazing how much of the kind of crypto ecosystem flows through this little rainy corner of the world.
Yeah, well, it's objectively the best corner of the world, I would say.
It's got its pros for sure. And by the way, I noticed Jason joined, so I don't know if you're here just to listen in the Discord or if you have some questions, but it's a llama party, so just speak up if you got anything to say.
Oh, yo, I was going to point out earlier when we were talking about Frax and what they're up to, I just noticed that they have a governance proposal to direct the fees that they earn on Frax ETH towards bribes. So like that's interesting as that product scales, like as it grows in adoption and use, it just as it earns more revenue, that revenue gets redirected back towards gaining more incentives to, I mean, there's no other staking product out there that has that sort of functionality going on.
Yeah, Frax went all in with the bribe game and the curve war thing. It used to be a curve war, but now it's just like a Frax slaughterhouse. I mean, they saw early how much market share that they could grow by participating in that, and they saw it before anybody else really. I think they've been consistently growing their stake in Convex and in Curve over time by doing this process of bribing to incentivize pools, farming the earnings that they bribe, and then just keeping the cycle going. Yeah, it's and somebody who's cynical might be like a little bit worried that they're kind of exploiting the process, but it's fair game, and they're exploiting it because other people weren't smart enough to get into it.
You could do a thought experiment, like if you went back in time and everyone knew what they knew now, how would they have approached developing a curve strategy, in hindsight? Like you can only really do it once. If like there really is a network effect and curve has some like sort of head start advantage. But I going back to Frax ETH, it was interesting because it wasn't too long ago there was a lot of debate in the ETH community around Lido finance and consolidation of staked ETH products, and there was everyone was kind of left scratching their heads on what could be done to introduce diversity in that ecosystem. And it kind of came out of left field that simply by using curve incentives, that fueled an alternative strategy. And so it just makes me wonder if anything like that will play out again in the future. Like I also wonder about things like Try Crypto. Like, will there be a Frax? Like, Try Crypto is one of the most successful pools on Curve. Will there be a Frax version of that with like Frax Bitcoin, Frax ETH, Frax, base pool? Like, will they be able to like sort of will that into existence using their, and then capture the value of that?
Yeah, that was interesting. There was a proposal on the Gov forum for that, which hasn't gotten as much play as I would have expected. This is from Crypto Hunts, just from Alphaverse DeFi Fund, suggesting that we launch a Try Crypto, but swap the tether out for Frax BP. I'm curious what people on the phone, or sorry, on the calls thought on this is.
I like it.
It's interesting when Frax decides to get involved in using incentives. Like, I was just looking. I can't post an image in here, but if you go to Convex and look at the DOLA pool, you'll see DOLA 3 curve and then DOLA Frax base pool, and you can see like where Frax decided to use its incentives, and all of the liquidity has moved from one pool from 3 curve to Frax base pool. And like that's just one really visual example. If you like filter by USD, you can kind of see them right next to each other. And so like I just have to believe they could do that to Try Crypto.
Go ahead and share your screen. Feel free to share your screen if you want to bring it up.
My screen?
Yeah.
Here, let me see. I don't know. I feel like that project is worth taking on because of the revenue.
Yeah, but I mean, Frax has so much power to direct curve emissions. I feel like if they wanted to, set up their own Frax tripool, they just have to will it and it'll happen. Because I mean, they just have so much voting power at this point, and their partnership with Convex. I mean, Frax and Convex together as a team is pretty much like a juggernaut.
Yeah, it's the elephant pleasuring itself meme, but with
Yeah.
With the money hose.
Yeah, let's see. So I'm sharing. I was just noticing, like, look, this DOLA 3 curve right here has $12 million in it. And then right down here, the one with the Frax base pool has $61 million in it. This was not I think this pool up here used to have this used to have everything, and it had like 90 million bucks in it. So
yeah, it's amazing how fast liquidity incentives really respond. It goes back to that question from earlier about, does anyone is this gauge stuff even going to work? It clearly does. Like the fact that you could just drive even incremental amounts of liquidity to pools just by redirecting gauge weights has been proven time and time again at this point.
You can especially imagine that once it's abstracted to where smart contracts essentially in large funds are actively changing it. It's not even a person anymore. You literally just change a value, and then as different smart contracts start activating and just see that the integer has changed or float has changed, they just immediately initiate a transfer. So it can become even more automated that small changes will just control the liquidity. It's not even people acting at that point, right?
is that how it's being built? It's intended, like that's the vision of the future, or is that sort of development happening right now?
Oh, I was just saying that you could build this into, if some DAO has a treasury, they could just initiate a smart contract that daily tried to optimize their curve weights or something, taking into account gas fees and stuff. So I'm just saying that you could easily build that layer of abstraction. It doesn't need to be individual people. And at that point, then you can really see how, then it truly becomes where you just change a little thing and then money just immediately starts gushing back and forth depending on, where the incentives are. So.
Okay, so I got kind of a question I wanted to bring up since we were talking about Frax. Frax has been criticized, and I don't know how I feel about this personally, so I'm just kind of throwing it out there, see what you guys' thoughts are. Frax has been criticized because although it is a really powerful player in the curve wars, the Frax stablecoin does not generate hardly as much volume as some of the other larger stablecoins of that market cap. And so the concern is like, well, if Curve becomes the exchange of Frax, can Frax really pull its weight and give us what we need, which is we need to generate volume. So I don't know if that's a great or if that's the appropriate like foundational belief that that Curve needs volume. But if we say that we do need volume, can Frax deliver? Does anybody have an answer to that?
Well, is the fear that like Frax is like an entirely self-referential sort of like DeFi, like corner of DeFi, where no one really ever knows when they're interacting with Frax or uses Frax? Like Frax, it purely exists on this house of incentives that like they've cornered, but like nobody's really using it.
Well, I think one of the
That's scary. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say a couple of things is that, it's always you got to remember USDT, USDC, a lot of these are pairs on like centralized exchanges, which means they're getting huge amounts of volume, especially USDT. So if Frax is, I think it's just important to take that into account, right? There's huge volumes. These exist in huge amounts, especially because they're utilized on centralized exchanges by whales to make gigantic transfers, it's outside of DeFi.
Yeah, and I think the gameplay for Frax, which is a similar gameplay for a lot of these other emerging stablecoins, is they seem to have this strategy like if we can build up a large enough market cap for the stablecoin, at some point that will reach a critical mass where will become like the default option for like maybe on centralized exchanges. Like people will decide to trade in Frax instead of USDT if it gets big enough, and it's just a matter of pumping the size until we reach that critical mass that they have no choice but to adopt us. So, but I don't know if that's a flawed kind of strategy or not.
I mean, it's all really interesting. Only time will tell. I think especially with like we're talking about Frax Lend, that's a different way to essentially mint Frax. So that is another avenue to increase utility. I think does Frax Lend already incorporate staked Frax ETH? Can you mint against stake Frax ETH? Does anybody know?
I'm trying to pull it up right now and see.
Because that's obviously the end game, right? It's like, okay, get $1 billion worth of ETH to stake, and then give them the ability to essentially, get liquidity out of their stake Frax. Frax is the central bank, right? So just here's your bond, and so we're gonna mint against these treasuries that we have in our little vault. So I think that's really like one of the big flywheels they're going for.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it just yet, but we'll have to see. I know from conversations I've had with a lot of the Curve team that what they care about most is just volume, because at the end of the day, that's really what underpins the value of Curve, is the idea that it can continue increasing volume of trades going through the system and trading volume. And Curve, of course, is shooting for large volumes, high efficiency, very low fees, so higher and higher volumes to make up for it. So I think Curve will be happy as long as it has kind of like a significant portion of the traffic flowing through its site. But that's just my 2 cents.
Although I have recently been hearing some things about this Curve USD and how it will be able to generate interest from the loans that it creates. That just by having created the loan, it'll earn interest for the DAO that goes straight back into V-Curve pockets. And that seems really interesting to me that, we could have another kind of revenue stream that isn't based on volume, that it's based on adoption of the stablecoin instead.
It actually, yeah, it's pretty amazing because it means you can basically drop trading fees to about zero So you could literally have zero fee trading between crv.USD and other collateral pairs, and you would still be making money for the DAO at the same time off the lending. So it's like pretty interesting the way it's being constructed, in my opinion.
I also think that basically the non-liquidatable loans where essentially they TWAP in and out of your key asset as you get closer to liquidation. I mean, that is just genius. That is, it's basically like the Uniswap V3 position market maker where you just add that onto the loan. That's quite genius to me. It seems like a key. Somebody finally put the two pieces together. So
Uniswap V3, but you're not losing money on it.
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
You're losing a little bit in terms of like, of course, there's an APR, and you may get liquidated in massive price movements. Where do you think that crv.USD could get on the list? Because if you look at the list of stablecoins, it's Tether, USDC, Binance are the, of course, big players with over 20 billion a piece. Tether up to 70 billion. And then the algorithmic ones, you have DAI and Frax are the only two above $1 billion. So could crv.USD hit that billion mark?
Well, what's the
Garrett, what's in TriCrypto right now? What's the amount that's in?
Yeah, like,
can you go
what's the
to
main-
Curve? Yeah, what's locked?
what's the constraining factor? Like, how would you estimate the universe of collateral?
So my understanding, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see, but it looks very much from reading the documentation as if it's going to launch with just Ethereum as collateral. But it looks also as if it's, to me, it looks like the front end is being constructed in a manner that would allow it to use other types of collateral.
Yeah, I'm sure ETH is just getting started, just like test the waters, make sure that it's actually, working out in the wild the way that Mick designed it to work. And I know that he's been really cautious with making sure that he's figuring out all the bugs with it before going live. There was some talk maybe a month ago. People thought that it was gonna, launch in September or October or whatever. Still haven't seen it, but that's probably a good thing in the grand scheme of things that we're making sure that it's going to be like as bug free as possible before people start putting their money into it.
Wouldn't it be great if crv.USD got released and Crypto Risks just savaged it? You wrote this scathing report saying it should be nowhere near Curve.
Yeah, Mick's in our chat, so I kind of want to make sure that he stays there.
You're asking about TriCrypto earlier. It's at 200 million roughly in total volume locked at the moment. So that breaks down to 71 million USDT, 3,500 Bitcoin, and 45,000 ETH roughly.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'd say I was just seeing there's up in the top left, there's $5.7 billion in total deposits on. Is that on ETH or is that on all chains? Either way, that you could imagine that's the collateral that could be put up. So you could pull 80% of that or something. So, billions essentially. And especially when funds get in here and just say, oh, well, what's the safest protocol? We want to keep our liquid staked ETH and we want a loan against it. So, I mean, you could easily see it ballooning. So
it's 5.65 billion on Ethereum, and on all the other side chains, another 400 million.
Yeah, Mick was telling me pretty recently that he had been invited to some sort of conference that was hosted by TradFi organizations, and that they were exploring crypto blockchain technology, and they invited a couple of DeFi projects to come participate. He told me that the only two projects that were invited were Curve and Liquidity. And it seems to me that is because those are the two protocols that are truly governing in a decentralized way, or that have reasonable aspirations to be able to accomplish that goal. A lot of these DeFi projects, it's more like open finance startup with a core team who calls all the shots. But really, the great thing about Curve and the way that Mick has designed it is he's designed it so that he's like a guy in the crowd. You know, he's not like the rock star on stage. Although he's like, we clearly know that he's a rock star, like coming up with all these like genius ideas. He doesn't want to be the focal point of the protocol, and he's designed it in a way so that the DAO is really governing it.
I'd like to go to a conference like that. So I'm a sub advisor to a DeFi hedge fund. And like we invest in Convex, we invest in Curve. But our interest in it, and like I've never heard anyone in TradFi ever be interested in anything because it was decentralized, other than like crypto in general, like, oh, Bitcoin, like that decentralized idea, like, you know, is what makes it an asset. And like there's really nothing else about decentralization that is, you know, compelling beyond like it defining an investable class. And then like I think what makes Curve interesting though to funds and probably Liquidity, which I'm surprised that they were there, because like in TradFi, like you tell them like, oh, you can own ETH, and by the way, it earns interest. Like that blows their minds. Like they're still at the phase where like they're just learning about staking. That's where they are. They're still like Bitcoin, ETH. We have heard there's other things happening. We've heard about DeFi. We don't really know what they are. Like I'm even surprised that Curve came up, because honestly, like I talked to tons of these TradFi people, and they're just like we know that ETH can do things, and then like even that person will be like, oh, staking, what, you earn interest? That's crazy. I would think Curve is interesting though, because funds are interested in stable coins, and they're interested, and like the idea of earning yield and then like doing big swaps, like that is all kind of compelling. And if you were to do any sort of research on DeFi, Curve would come up if like you're looking into that topic.
I mean, it attracts the big
Yeah,
brains, as we said.
No, I agree that I don't think that the TradFi orgs are like far enough along to really be totally on board with the ethos and the ideology of
I think DeFi
what.
is only a few thousand participants, really.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those participants are actually just sort of larger money bagged people, and then like a couple large market makers. I think it's kind of like a subreddit size group of people on the internet.
Yeah.
Which actually is
That's
kind of
probably
crazy.
true. It's probably
It-
true.
It's kind of crazy. Like I think like there's less than 50,000 people who have like touched DeFi. And
But on the point of decentralization, I think this is just like, you know, me making shit up, but I think that TradFi people would be able to understand at the very least that there is like potential problems with the SEC if the protocol is not truly decentralized. So there is an incentive for them to prioritize like being involved with something that has true decentralization properties, because if they get involved with a protocol that has a core team and they can be targeted, then they're going to be targeted at some point. It's only a matter of time before a lot of the, you know, the SEC starts going after a lot of these DeFi protocols that aren't really decentralized.
for what it's worth, I think that sort of topic is sort of like the idea of crypto people being like, hey, you know, if we do the token launch this way, then technically we're decentralized enough, and then technically we're not a security. I think the only people who even talk about that are in crypto, and people in TradFi are unaware of that conversation, and they're not like looking for projects that like check the boxes of decentralization, that are like, oh, that one won't be a security, therefore we'll touch that one. I think like it's a little bit even more high level, like is any of this legal? Or
Well, I mean, at least we know for ourselves that we need to prioritize decentralization for practical reasons, not just for ideology, but for our own survival. You know, it's the only way that we're going to last, right? We all kind of know that.
To
Not
play the
everybody.
to play the devil's advocate, though, you know, I was listening to, I can't remember who was talking about some podcast with somebody who was from TradFi talking about DeFi, and they're bringing up this exact comment about, when the SEC comes in, like these are obviously securities. Nobody wants to call them that, but they obviously are. They do have legal rights. But the point is that if the SEC came down and said, okay, you need to publish all of these normal financial documents, we need to understand, which protocols could actually produce the type of documents necessary to,
Nobody.
basically nobody. I mean, and if it was, the only people who could would maybe be
Maker and
Aave,
Uniswap, Maker, Aave. Yeah.
Aave, maybe Curve. I don't even know. So like only the biggest
Yeah.
protocols are the ones going to be actually able to, it's going to crush everyone else. Essentially, it's going to
There was
crush
a
everyone else.
There was a discussion about how Curve could exert sort of its legal rights as an organization during the time when there's this protocol Saddle Finance, which was accused of basically copying Curve code implementation of the stable swap and changing the language from Viper to Solidity, and so people were kind of upset with Saddle for doing that, and they were thinking, well, how could we like go after them and sue them? And the outcome of the discussion was kind of like, well, we can't because we don't have like a legal entity that would be able to like be represented legally.
Yeah,
And
you're going to open Pandora's box right there. Exactly.
yeah,
Don't
so
do it.
that conversation kind of got the kibosh because we realized, as a DAO, we can't do that. Like, technically, he has a company, Swiss Stake. His company could get legal representation on behalf of the DAO. But what ended up coming out of that was there was this LexPunk like crypto law organization that is sort of like representing the interests of crypto generally by, I guess, doing lobbying and that kind of thing. I don't know what LexPunk does, but Curve ended up participating in like support for this organization to just kind of generally represent crypto without like being a legal representative of us directly.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, so I couldn't speak on any of the legal aspects. But I know that LexPunk recently have been filing some suits related to some of the more hostile actions that have been taken lately. And just to follow up on everything that you all were saying, I think we can see a bit of the tea leaves in how it's going to play out in terms of J.P. Morgan using Aave, and they modified a modified version of Aave. And it's been Polygon that's really been pushing all these big companies to be adopting it. So it looks like it's Polygon's amazing biz dev team that's going to be what actually bridges TradFi and DeFi.
Oh yeah, and I also heard that Reddit's doing this like community NFT stuff, and they're doing that on Polygon, right?
And Instagram, I believe, is also on Polygon.
Yeah, I don't know how Polygon's doing it, but good for those guys.
Yeah, wow.
So not financial advice, of course, like nothing in this, but maybe time to load up on some Matic.
There's a company I invested in that's pretty interesting called Third Web, and they make developer tools for that. So anyone, they make it really easy for anyone. It's a Third Web, Third Web developer tools, yeah, exactly, and they make it really easy. I think if you go to, I think it's just thirdweb.com, is it? Let me just confirm.
I've been using those tools.
They're
really,
incredible.
Really easy to use.
You can they have an SDK where you can type like JavaScript or Python and it will spit out an EVM compatible smart contract. They're adding Solana, and they make, and so what I know is, because I've been talking to them, so about half the smart contracts on Polygon are powered by them, and Polygon has like 15,000 active smart contracts over the last 30 days, and this company, though, Third Web, they're talking to every brand in every industry. Like Animoca is coming out with like 20 games next year that are all crypto games, and they're all going to be They're all going to be using like a Game Pass type system that's NFT enabled. It's going to be kind of like the thing that we all talk about on the podcasts, or Pepsi's doing stuff, and McDonald's, and every movie studio. And what's interesting is I was talking to them about like, hey, has anything changed with the bear market? have you seen anything different in the adoption of your product, or like how are like brands reacting differently now that the market's changed and they're just like, it's as if it's not even happening. Like
Oh.
brands are still just like fucking around with crypto stuff. They're at the stage where they're like, this is really cool. They're trying to figure out what to build. They're very much not thinking, how do we make like a valuable NFT, or like how do we make like a token go up? Which is really cool. I think that's all really encouraging. And like that's very much not a story out there in crypto right now. Like the sheer number of brands that are still onboarding an increasingly large number every week.
What is the narrative for DeFi and crypto at this point? I'm curious to hear everyone's take on it. And mind you, Wormhole, I didn't set a time limit, so if you have to bounce, feel free to bounce. But
Okay, no, I'm good for now. But anyway, yeah, continue.
yeah, I'm just curious because like I feel like if you talked to people a year and a half ago, the it would have been inflation hedge was the largest narrative for crypto at the time, and
Oh yeah, not so much anymore, huh?
I mean, now we're seeing money being vacuumed out of the system. The inflation's still happening, but no one's really heavily pushing the inflation hedge narrative. So what? And as we said, like a lot of people don't care about decentralization, which I think is broadly true. I think there's a very small subset of builders that care about it. I don't think most of the NFT people care about it. I don't think the Web3 VCs care about it. So what is the narrative for crypto? Why is it likely to become this thing that flippens the existing financial system?
I have an idea or a thesis. And of course it's changing all the time. I would argue that right now, and I think probably everybody on the call had this moment, remember that first time you sent, from your centralized exchange, you bought Ethereum or whatever, and you sent it to your first wallet and you checked the address 3 times and it was scary and it maybe didn't show up and you're like, oh my gosh, where is it? We are kind of in like the 56K modem days of DeFi. It feels like we're on AOL, guys, interacting with these websites. That's what it feels like. And so what I think is that, we got to get to DSL and then broadband, but it's going to be completely seamless. And what's the use case? I have a small kid and I think about her future a lot. And I think like, when there's going to be some, some creative person in the future that she wants to, buy like literally like their coin or support them in some way. And it'll be an easy way for them to make, a simple payment system. Like they don't have to go through any type of Shopify or creating anything like that. They can easily send digital, assets that are worth something back and forth. Anybody can do it, anybody can deploy it. I think it's stuff like that. The seamless nature with which you can just transfer value, with the lending, with the payments, all of that, and incorporating it into like the smartphone style devices or whatever it will be in the future. That's what I think. Right now you've got to go to banks, you still got to use like Cash App or things like that. I think it'll just be so seamless with interacting with websites and things like that. So I know it's pretty broad, but that's all that I can think.
Yeah, and going off of your it's like the 56K modem days right now. Part of the big part of the problem I think is that these blockchains are still, very isolated within their own little internal universe of what happens on the blockchain, and spanning between different networks is like pretty clunky at best. And at worst, it's like terrible because people are losing millions of dollars on these bridge hacks that happen all the time. But yeah, I mean, Curve has aspirations not just to be on Ethereum, but to exist everywhere. And so we're on like a dozen different chains and L2s. But we don't have full functionality to be able to like truly exist cross chain. And so we'll set up like the similar pools on a second layer network, but we don't have the governance that can dictate what happens on that second layer chain. What I think will happen in the future is we're going to have a much more data-rich experience on chain of like real-world data coming on and being useful to people, and we'll have systems connected more seamlessly with these meta layer type networks that are highly secure and scalable, that make the experience just more seamless.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think it's really tricky to know what the narrative is when you're in the midst of it, but I can see that like we're gonna reflect on like these cycles and we're gonna be like, oh, we had ICOs in 2017 or whatever, 2018. We had liquidity mining and yield farming in like the last cycle. And it's even possible that like there's elements of DeFi that are used to kind of prop up L1s. And I think we're going to be saying like over in previous cycles there were like a lot of operating systems thinkers that dominated the crypto discourse as they were developing L1s. And I think recently we just started to get like application developers to join the discourse to discuss what you do in crypto, and that's where we have like that discourse is really narrow right now around JPEGs and DeFi. And so I think what's going to happen is over the next 2 or 3 years we're going to see a lot of other applications get launched, like in the same way that like when the App Store just came out for the iPhone, the first apps were really basic. It would be like your phone would be like a lighter, and like you would press the phone and like the lighter would turn on, or like you would
Yeah.
point your phone to the night sky and it'd be like the galaxy. And all it would do is prove that you have an accelerometer in your phone, and we're like, whoa, that's nifty. And like JPEGs right now are like proving that like an NFT is what it is, right? Like it's really basic. I think we're gonna get more sophisticated apps over the next 36 months that are gonna change
Yeah.
the way we think about it. And so like this is gonna be the era of like the beginning of crypto apps. And
Yeah.
that's it. Like we just need more use cases, more than just like right now we have providing the initial bootstrapped, like decentralized bootstrapped liquidity for like crypto startups. We have like crypto speculation and we have like JPEGs. Like, all right, that's cool. Those are great use cases. We're going to get more.
It needs to be so abstracted though from like it'll get to this point where, like you're saying with the App Store, where you're interacting and you have no idea you're actually, settling on Ethereum or whatever is going on. You're going to be on a layer 2 or a layer 3, and there's computation that'll be going off chain, and then it'll just, settle. Like the average person just, it's just like I said, it's like it feels like the early days, like AOL. Like it's going to be so seamless.
Nobody's going to think to themselves like, God, I need to use crypto. In the same way that like nobody's like, you know what I need to do right now? I need to use a website, or like I need to use an app. Like people are going to be like, I want to make my friend laugh, or like I want to feel cool, or I want to feel special and a part of something. And there are going to be crypto apps that tap into those feelings better than like what we currently have today. And you're going to use those things.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking of is because I'm like involved with Curve and the DAO and stuff, so I'm thinking of like application specific to that kind of world. So not really like the making your friends laugh and bringing people together kind of stuff, but I'm thinking of like Snapshot. How right now Snapshot has this polling system basically off chain where you like vote with your feelings, like how you feel about something, and then you rely on a multi-sig of 3 people to actually execute on your wishes. So it's a great tool to allow governance to happen in a way that everybody can participate in, because you don't have to pay the gas fees for it. But what I've heard Snapshot Labs is working on is a layer 2 kind of solution where you can actually make your vote count on chain, but it happens on a layer 2 where your transaction fees are much lower, and then settles back to the main chain and actually will execute trustlessly. I don't know what the status of that. I've heard they've been working on it for a while, but that sort of thing would be a huge upgrade to the way that we do governance, and allow it to be accessible to people, but also not rely on 3 people to do your will.
I just think DAO use cases are so narrow right now, and there's probably like 12 DAOs out there that are actually functioning DAOs where like the people show up and they're all like, let's behave as a DAO, and they all do. And then everybody else is just like fundraising with like, and so like I even wonder what DAO tools we really need. Like, what do we need to make more efficient? Because like I wonder what even a DAO will be in 4 years. Like the complexity of like the way it's going to be integrated into organizations over time. I'm just saying we're early.
I agree, we're early.
I will say one
Curve is one of those DAOs. Like it has a crazy token that like modifies everyone's behavior in this weird way.
Yeah.
So, bringing it back to JPEGs briefly, Wormhole, in the interview we had, the written interview, which I advise everyone to read because it was really great to hear all your background. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you're so into music, what at all, if, are you seeing any kind of audio JPEGs taking off in the form of like audio NFTs? Like, what's the state of that? Are like the musicians talking about this at all? Are they releasing stuff? Like, I'm not a music person, so I haven't been to a concert in like 20 years. Is this like actually going to become a use case for the like are NFTs going to change the music industry?
It's something that I've paid attention to when people have discussed it to me. Like I remember there's an audio engineer that I work with, and how long ago was this? This was a number of years ago. It might have been like 5 years ago. And he went to a conference. It was the thing that they do in Las Vegas. What's it called? CES or whatever. It's the Future Products convention. And there was a crypto booth there, or there were a few like crypto booths, and somebody had this idea of we'll have this music NFT kind of. Well, I don't know if it was an NFT, but it was a marketplace where artists can have like their music is sellable, so that they could sell shares of their music, and then there would be some sort of way of getting revenue from their music and then distributing it to the owners. I'm guessing that was like a startup idea that just like completely failed, because I've never, I haven't heard of anything like that taken off. I think that the concept is cool, because this is like a really like bad problem, I think, in the music industry, about like royalties and keeping track of royalties that artists are owed, and getting artists the money that they need. It seems like something that is ripe for disruption. Like, people complain about Spotify all the time, how artists make basically nothing from the platform. And I've heard of these startups coming around who are like, hey, we need to empower artists, and they can have these collectibles that give people, ownership, or I don't even know if it's ownership of the music, or it's just something you can show your friends and be like, hey, I got like the signed copy basically of this great artist's music, and there's only 5 of them, and I got one. So it seems like it's mostly something to show off. But what's interesting to me is when you can have a NFT and put utility into it. I like the DeFi stuff. I like that you can turn money into more money, and that kind of thing. So it's cool to me if you have utility into it in an NFT. I didn't get into the NFT craze in the 2020, 2021, because it was just like, a bunch of dumb pictures that people were like minting, and it just didn't seem to me like it deserved all the. I mean, it's great that it got all the traction it did, but it didn't seem like it was necessarily deserved. It was like a bubble,
I totally agree. I saw a couple, like you were saying, projects that essentially during the bull run proposed to, say that they were going to decentralize funding for artists and allow artists to essentially sell like a small portion of their future royalties at basically as some sort of token that you could buy into. I think it is like a very novel idea for fundraising, and I definitely think there'll be a number of use cases like that during the next bull run. Whenever retail gets in and there's a huge excitement, I bet something like that's going to occur.
I would. No, go on. What were you gonna say?
And I could see like at concerts or something, there's the merch table, and you can
True.
you can pick up your phone and scan a QR or whatever, and you can pay for like an NFT or whatever at the merch table. And that's just like, it doesn't have to be like this big involved thing. It's just like this little token of like, hey, I was here at this show, and it's cool that I get to have this thing. And fans get pretty ridiculous about like the artists that they love. So they're not looking necessarily to get something big out of it. They just want to have something to show for that they gave support or whatever.
Does Coachella have an NFT yet? Did they give out an NFT that said, "Yo, you paid to go and sit in the
They sure
in the hot
did.
desert"? They did. Okay. That would make sense. Okay.
Talking about like Burning Man.
What I would say to everyone, so as like an investor in the space, I would just say, as you come across teams that say that they have products that are like, we do music NFTs, check out this cool website, look at what our product looks like. Ask the question to ask them is not like they're going to describe a future where their music NFT totally makes sense and like solves revenue splits for like all parties perfectly. It's going to be amazing. Ask them like, what are they doing to get users? Like, what did they do lately to get users? This is honestly like, that's the question to ask about any product in crypto because very often all the work that teams are putting in right now is on like the story and the pitch and like look at my graphics and like there will be some time when we go to market after we raise money from you or whatever. And they're all pre that. And what we need to solve is like, how do you get users? Like, what does that look like? And so, yeah, that's where the discourse I think needs to be. And like people need to be held accountable and we need to hear these stories because like everyone needs to hear like, how do you get users? How do you get them?
We'll poach Polygon biz dev people.
Yes.
They're getting devs. I don't know if they're getting users.
I think the Reddit NFT thing, like I don't follow the NFT space all that closely outside my own NPCers exposure, but it seems to me as if the Reddit team did a good job of just abstracting the whole process. So all these people who, like, frankly, like a lot of them hate NFTs, but they didn't know they were buying them, and all of a sudden started buying what they're calling digital collectibles, and saw the usage spiking tremendously. So it seems like there is a big future for some of these existing companies that have massive audiences to kind of abstract things and start to build out those layers there. And I don't know much about like social networking either, but I know that those image sharing sites are very popular, like the Pinterests of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it does seem like there's kind of a real natural way to tap into the eyeballs market of Web 2 stuff and kind of onboard them onto Web 3 without them noticing.
I think another hidden catalyst out there for a lot of DeFi is just, and like this doesn't even require new technology. Someone is going to solve the user experience problem of making a good game. They're going to make a real game that like is good. And it doesn't like, you're not flowed in with like a tokenomic model. You're just like, this is a good game. And the thing is, games generate so much economic activity inside them. You just need one. And it's going to go nuclear on the blockchain. And it's going to somehow it's going to plug into stable coins. And it's going to shoot something in DeFi off the charts. And everyone's just going to be like, wow, like, holy shit. That's going to be the next big thing will be a game. It won't be some like brand new technology.
Yeah, I think so too. I was talking to a guy who works for a big video game company. He's a composer for the company, but I guess internally they were discussing NFTs and games, and they decided to ban NFTs from their platform. Which it could be something that they reverse at some point. I don't, and for all I know, maybe they could have already reversed that. But he was pretty skeptical of the whole thing, and what he told me was that they polled their gamers and got their sense of like how they feel about it, and I guess their gamers were saying like, oh, we don't want NFTs.
Yeah, as
Probably.
if they.
Well, yeah, exactly, and they're probably thinking like, oh yeah, because we know that like there's these like farming games where you just like farm like the items in the game and sell them or whatever, and that ruins the whole gaming experience. We don't want anything to do with that. But this is another one of those cases where I feel like it's part of the whole experimentation process. You've got to make a lot of failures, and then somebody is going to hit up on the right idea. That's going to just be completely massive, and it's going to be like you guys are talking about. It's going to be a seamless game experience where you don't even realize that you're collecting NFTs, but you have this item that you own now, and maybe it does something in a new way that nobody thought of before, and it just takes off.
I have to agree. We essentially have NFT currently in the Counter-Strike global offensive community. They essentially, you open loot boxes, you get special weapons that are customizable, and then you trade those on an online marketplace. I mean, they are essentially NFTs. But you're correct that there's so much kind of crowd momentum against NFTs that I will talk to my close friends and just mention, oh yeah, these are essentially NFTs, and they will say, no, there's no way, they're not NFTs at all, blah blah blah. So there's just seems like there's a lot of group hate in the gaming community against the term NFT, even though there may already exist.
I'm a
And
little.
I was even talking to a guy who's an artist who makes NFTs, and during the bubble last year he was selling these things for like $500 a pop or whatever. And the way he was talking about it, he's like, "Oh yeah, I have no idea why people want to buy those, but they keep buying them, so I'll keep making them." And that was sort of his attitude, like, "I don't know what's the big deal about all this, but I'm making good money doing it right now."
I used to work in the game. I spent like 7 years in the gaming industry and like used to work at Twitch. And like I'm skeptical of the pushback of the gaming community. I think they just haven't found something they like. Like the gaming community is very comfortable being critical of things. That's what they do. They analyze, is this game good, out loud on the internet. And so like they criticize everything, and especially like new economics, like loot boxes, and like they hate that stuff. And but like they also love it all. Like they love the stuff they hate, and like they buy the stuff. And I just don't think they've been given a thing they like. And then the other thing I would say is, like, I know for a fact that like most of the gaming industry is that they're just like the rest of the world. Like they don't really know that much about crypto. They don't really have an opinion about it, and a lot of them are super curious. There's some you see these high profile, like, oh, we're banning it, like we're like rolling it back, and like that makes the news, which is interested in looking for conflict, but like that's not really what's happening in gaming. Like Third Web, for example, like is like hundreds of gaming companies are right now building on Third Web. Like there's gonna be hundreds of games coming out over the next 36 months in crypto. It's gonna be crazy. There's gonna be so many games in the next few years.
There's a game that some of my friends like. It's called Escape from Tarkov, and
Yeah.
it's like this game where you go into this world. It's like what do you call it? Where there's a bunch of people fighting each other. But you
Like
find the
Battle
loot box.
Royale.
Battle Royale, yeah. And you find the loot boxes and you collect items and then you improve the stuff that you have. And then there's this marketplace where all the things that you find, you can sell it on the open market. There's like a freaking in-game economy for this thing. And the economy is a big part of the game. And it's just like, dude, you guys, like what you're doing is like the digital collectibles. It's like freaking NFTs right here. And still like they don't make the connection that that's what they want. They want this to be like a permanent ownership thing. They don't get that for some reason.
Hey guys, I got to drop and go back to my normie job, but it's been great talking to you guys. Hope to do it soon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me
great
too.
talk.
It was fun.
Peace.
You guys are awesome. See ya.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for joining. And Puffer and Second Set Maze, I don't know if you're staying quiet because you're afraid of interrupting the conversation or anything, but this is a llama party, so feel free to chat.
Woo-hoo.
Just listen to everybody talk. It's been great.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Wormhole, thank you so much for joining. This has been for my sake, this has been a lot of fun, just in terms of getting to hang out and hear all your big brain thoughts. We'll have to have you come back some other time. Maybe once
It's been a pleasure, Garrett.
Maybe once
It's been-
CurveUSD
it's been-
launches, we'll have a round table.
Yeah, thanks for chatting. I had a great time. And hopefully we can do it again soon.
Excellent. I think that's a natural cue to end it. So everyone, if you do happen to listen to all this, please drop in the comments. We brought Wormhole Oracle on at your recommendation. You said you think you'll be cool enough to snag Wormhole, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to be cool enough, but we'll see what we can do. But aim big. So drop in the comments who you'd like to see on next, or Wormhole. Feel free to tag someone you think that we should bring on next. Try and do another one of these maybe in a week or two.
Ooh. Okay, yeah, I can think of somebody.
That'd be kind of fun if we had like the tag you're it type system. So we have each guest recommend and try and help recruit the next guest.
Okay, yeah, I'll think of somebody.
Excellent. All right, everyone.
It'd be cool to have a release party.
Yeah, release party has to
for
happen.
crv.mktcap.
I'm worried because I have some
That'd be fun.
I have some travel coming up, so might be tougher, but I will still like just bust out the laptop even if I'm like on an airplane or something and try and get something
You're
going.
always traveling. You're the digital nomad.
Not so much. Well, you were talking earlier about the climate in which you live, and you know that we're not going to see the sunshine for about 6 months.
Oh yeah, you got to get out of here, huh?
Yeah, I got to at least try and get my vitamin D quota.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, everyone, take care. We will catch you all next time we do this. Have a good one.